Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu wa-salamu alayka ayyuhan nabi. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. MashaAllah. Firstly, salam to everyone that's here and also to those who are listening online. For whoever's online, if you could just use the function in the Zoom account and just raise your hand so I can see that, or I know that all of you can hear, inshallah. So whoever's listening online, inshallah, if you could just raise your hands. So at the moment it's just one person. So if you're, okay, there you go, mashallah. 2 people. And there's over 13 people on there, so inshallah. Okay, good, alhamdulillah. So it sounds like everyone online can hear me as well. So the purpose of this session, inshallah, or what I'm going to cover, it's going to be a short session, so it's not going to take up too much time. And it's a simple session, but it effectively brings together everything that you've been doing. And before I go into the presentation, it'd be good just for me to understand, and also for you to understand, what you've taken away from this retreat. What have you benefited from? What do you think you're going to benefit from when you go away? And how are you going to implement this retreat when you return back to your localities, when you return home? Equally for the people that are online. So inshallah, I'm just going to ask if perhaps, Arun, if you could just take the mic, inshallah. And if brother, just raise your hand. Just give me anything from those who are here. Just raise your hands and tell me a particular thing or point that you feel that you've benefited from and that it's going to benefit you when you leave, i.e. one takeaway. So and you can't say what someone else says. So that way you want to put up your hand first.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yeah, I think the main thing I've taken away is, in regards to improving my salah, like beforehand when my mind would be going everywhere, but now I can concentrate a lot better on my salah, and I think taking that into normal everyday life as well, I can, have more of a focus, a goal, and when I can use it not only in salah but in just every day-to-day life as well. So that's probably the main thing I've taken away.
MashaAllah. So for the benefit of everyone, and all those who are online, you can use the chat function on the Zoom account to put your comments in as well. But Brother Qasim said a really important thing. He's effectively identified a skill that he's taken away, that not only is he going to use in his salah, he's going to use this for the rest of, in other things in his life as well. So alhamdulillah, so he's effectively taken a skill that he can use now going forward. Anyone else, inshallah? Brother Teek.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
So I
salam.
benefit from Hazrat Saab's discourse, and also especially the point about taking time in ruku and sujood and understanding the purpose of sujood. So I think my takeaway is from now on not just sort of like rush the ruku or sujood, sort of like take my time and engage in that sort of like love, intimate relationship with Allah in ruku and sujood.
MashaAllah. Very good, alhamdulillah. Anyone else? Let me just pick anyone, inshallah. While Harun is picking someone online, mashallah, so we have a number of participants that are watching or have been participating in the receipt virtually across the globe, actually. So one of them said that one of the things that they benefited from is aligning their thoughts at every aspect. Allah is with them, Allah is watching them, and Allah is hearing them. Effectively, those 3 keys, and how to bring that into their life. Another person has said, I learnt that prayer isn't much an outward aspect, but very much an intimate, inward aspect and relationship with Allah. Absolutely. And that is something that all of us should be walking away, taking away from this. That actually, this engagement of the salah, the one thing, if not anything that we've taken away, is that it's not what? It's not just a series of actions. It actually means something. There's a communication that happens with your Lord, and which most of you, alhamdulillah, reflected in your feedback. Brother Hassan?
When you're about to raise your hands, what Imam Ali said, what's the real purpose? To actually freeze and just divert your attention to Allah, surrendering to you totally to Allah. Inshallah, take that away.
MashaAllah. Very good. Anyone else? Alaikum salam.
When Hazrat Sahib said that, how the Sahabas actually used to pray their namaz, like for example when said about Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, that the arrow was pulled from him while they were in sajda, while they were in namaz, because their spirit was somewhere else, so they wouldn't even feel the pain. So how much focus the Sahabas had on how they actually prayed it, and how we've lost it and we've made it a burden.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add one more point that Brother Husnain said, so for those of you and for those online who may not have heard, one of the things that he mentioned was the story, well, the reality is not just the story of Imam Ali radiallahu anh, that when he had an arrow stuck in his leg, and he was a very strong companion, they effectively called him the Superman of our ummah. The what? The Superman of our ummah. I.e., while the Prophet should send a flank to take the enemy out here, he would just send Imam Ali to go and take out an entire flank of the enemy. That's the strength of Imam Ali radiallahu anh. So when we talk about him, it means something. And they go that when he had an arrow, I think it was after the Battle of Haybar, that in his leg, that when they tried to pull it out, what happens when you try to pull an arrow out? It hurts, because of the way it's pointed. So when they tried to do that, he would push them all off. They couldn't hold him down. That's his strength. So they just said, well, how are we going to get this arrow out? And then they said, it was suggested that actually go into Salah, because when you're in Salah, you don't know what's happening, because he's so much in the presence of Allah, so much engaged in his prayer, so much adab with Allah, that when he did his takbir and he was praying, and he did his salam, and he asked, are you not going to take the arrow out? And they looked, and the arrow was taken out. He just didn't feel anything. That's the kind of level. And the amazing thing, and this is from the feedback that I witnessed from the participants, is that some people were saying that they lost their consciousness in terms of where they were in this salah, because they were so engrossed in their spiritual salah. And inshallah, this is just a glimpse of what, inshallah, we can achieve, all of us. Because the likes of me, I was listening to what Shaykh Ahmad Abag was saying yesterday, and he mentioned that if we just do what we learnt on this retreat, all of us, you, people who are watching virtually, myself, yourselves, just for, what do they say, 5-6 days? Just for every salah, we'll see the presence will overflow in terms of how it will impact our life. So for all of us who are here, we should just do at least that as a takeaway. That let's just not do it. Yes, it is easy when we're here. We have the brotherhood, we have the bond, the fairs, the blessings. Yes, all of that helps. It helps with our salah, helps engaging. But also, it's when we go away that the real test is going to happen, inshallah. So let me just inshallah check if anyone's got any comments online. Another person has said, one of their big takeaways is the importance of establishing salah, not just offering salah. The correct understanding of this concept has changed my view and feeling. So understanding, so this attendee is saying, just having now understood the difference between offering salah and establishing salah has changed the entire outlook. Now someone really quickly just summarize for me what's the difference between offering salah and establishing salah. Someone that hasn't spoken perhaps. Before Haroon picks you. Three, 2, 1. So there's too much power. He doesn't have too much choice now as well for him.
Is it establish Salah when your life outside Salah is like it's in Salah?
Absolutely, very good summary, mashallah. Exactly that. It's that when you're in Salah, your eyes are, just an example, they're lowered, your gaze is lowered. So when you've established Salah, that when you walk through the streets, that your eyes are lowered. Just like in Salah, when you're offering Salah, your hands are controlled, etc. All of these things is when you start establishing this in your life that you truly meet that meaning of establishing Salah. Because Allah doesn't ask us what? To offer Salah. When it's mentioned in the Quran, we're asked to establish Salah. There's a huge difference between the two. Most of us, if the likes of me, we just offer a Salah. There's no establishment of it. Okay, so inshallah, I'm going to move on now. So what we're going to do for the next few minutes is just go through the different levels of prayer. So this presentation itself isn't difficult, but I'm going to try to bring out some key aspects. So they go that, and there's for those of you who are on the course purification, one of the sheets, so you will be familiar with this, that you check yourself, you measure yourself against this. And they go the most basic level, and this is your outer levels of prayer, is that you offer your prayer whilst knowing the fara'id, the wajibat, and the sunnah of wudu and ghusl, and the prayer and acting upon them, just knowing the basics. Yeah, that's the most what level? The most basic level. Yeah. So just on that, if I was to ask you, what's the fara'id of wudu? How many fards are there in wudu? Just raise your hand with the number. 4. And if you miss a fara'id, do you have wudu or you don't have wudu? You don't. Okay, and what are those 4 fards? You can just shout them out. Hands, yeah, from toe up, including your elbow. So that's 1. Face, what does that mean, face? Yeah? You kind of touched it, you went back down again. Is that so washing your face, you're absolutely right. From there, top of where your hair, like if I do that, my hairline's gone about over there somewhere. So just like that. But generally where your hairline normally is, yeah? Up to including below your chin, and from lobe to lobe, yeah? So second, third? With your feet, you're absolutely right. So that's including your toes, up to and including your ankles, inshallah. And finally, as the brother said, masa of your head, yeah? A quarter of your head should be wet. That's your fard. As long as you have that, you have wudu. And then you also, Brother Siraj took you through the sunnats as well, and the mustahab, the light things. So you should learn those as well, inshallah. And even the manner in which it's done, the intention, the siwak, everything that comes with it. But it's really important to know what your fards are, because you can gargle your mouth and rinse your nose for 3 times, but if you've missed the fard, you have no wudu. Yeah? What about ghusl? How many fards are there in ghusl? 3, and they are? Gargle, yeah. Your nose and your entire body being washed, yeah. Making sure you clear oil, any filth that you have. And when you gargle, when you're not fasting, you just tip your neck back. It needs to rest on your throat when you're gargling. And when you pull your water back, when you're doing ghusl, it comes up to the soft part of your nose, yeah. Again, when you're fasting, you're just a bit mindful about how much you pull that up, inshallah. Level 2 is to offer the prayer whilst having knowledge of the recommending mustahab, makruh, and etiquettes of the adab of the wudu, ghusl, and salah. So there's things that you can add to your prayer, you can add to your wudu, and things that are disliked as well. How you pray, how you doing your wudu in the wrong order, etc. All of those things. And Brother Mujtaba, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have classes, don't we, in the Zawiya that go through these. Yeah, so inshallah, so even any of your local masjids, you can just spend some time just going through those. It's just very, Brother Siraj went through a number of them, just making sure you memorize those. Level 3 is to offer the fard prayer with congregation in the mosque, and for women, there's more reward than praying home, to wear the clothes that are brought with halal income, eat food from halal means, keeps one's clothes above the ankles for men, to learn the prayer of the traveller, sick person, chronic illness. Let's just take this step by step first, yeah. The first one is, so it's to offer your fard prayer with congregation in the masjid. That's for men, i.e. to do that. Now, obviously we have coronavirus at the moment, and even though they're opening up the mosque. But the question we had to ask, and one of the things that the mashaikhs mentioned, is that when the mosques were first closed, what happened amongst the Muslim community? What was the reaction? Astaghfirullah was the reaction. Yes, you're absolutely right. Well, the world's come to end. How can they close the masjid? Oh Allah, Allah. And our teacher just said very, very, very simple thing. The test for hearts won't be when they close the masjids. Yeah, how many of us were occupying them anyway? It was only when it was taken away we thought, oh my God, they're going to be stopped. They said that their fear was that when the So when the lockdown happened, we were stopped, okay, from going to the masjid. But you were also stopped from going to the pubs and the clubs and everything else. Yeah. But they said that it's when the lockdown will open, that's when the real worry will be, is that actually how many of us are now going to, for all of those who said, oh, I can't believe the mosque closed, how many of us, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but if we ask ourselves, how many of us have actually started going to the mosque since the lockdown opened? Actually thinking to ourselves that this is such a blessing that could get taken away. How many of us have actually made ourselves better people, used the time in lockdown to make sure we don't indulge in sins, and now that we've got the opportunity, are we back out there again? That's the real question that we have to ask ourselves, and it's the hadith that Sheikh Ahmed Dabag mentioned during Ramadan on one of their virtual discourses, that on the Day of Judgment, people come before Allah and they will say to Allah, oh Allah, return us to where? Where will people be asking Allah to return them? To? Yes. Why? Hamza's right. People will beg Allah to return us where? For another chance. And what will Allah say? No, why? Because if I was to return you how many times? Once, 50 to 100 times, you won't change. Now, I used to always think, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, once you understand how bad something is and you're there before Allah, well, actually, why wouldn't you change? Of course you're going to change, you know. But that surety that Allah is saying, that actually, no, you won't. And it was only when we would, the mashaykhs mentioned that actually, this coronavirus, the COVID time that we had, yeah, so many people were not able to work, right? So what's your general excuses for people that don't pray? They're busy with work. We're busy with stuff. Lives are busy. We haven't got time. So what did Allah do? Allah closed work. Everything. Some of us, when we are committing sins, what's our excuse? There's too much what out there. Classic line, the brother got it. Too much fitna out there, brother. You know, I can't, and that's it. You know, oh, yeah, when I'm out there, I don't know what to do. So what did happen? Allah closed the pubs, the clubs, the restaurants, everything. So we got given a perfect environment now to be these great Muslims that we claim that we can be. We had more time than anything to pray Salah. We were at home, Bismillah, we could have done Jamaats with our family. Yeah, we didn't have to say anything. We were in the height of summer. It was 29, 30 degrees and we weren't out allowed, we weren't allowed outside. So you can't say, oh, it's fitna, brother, it's fitna, because you're at home. So all of that was closed for us. So the question then is really that when Allah's made the environment so easy for us to now become an awliya, forget awliya, just a basic standard or maybe even substandard Muslim, yeah? It was all made so easy for us. How many of us actually took that opportunity? How many of us made sure we became so regular in our prayer, made sure that we avoided committing sins? Because, and that's when the mashaykhs mentioned that hadith, and they mentioned, I thought, now I get it. They said, see why? Because when Allah made it so easy for you, you still couldn't sort yourselves out. So why on the Day of Judgment, Allah goes, I'll send you back 100 times, you still won't change. And that's the kind of thing that we should start thinking about now, actually, as we come out, you know, in, out of lockdown, and these retreats that we're having. How are we going to make sure we're implementing this into our life? Because we don't want to be amongst those people. That's why our blessed teacher, why we advise of these things, so we can avoid not being one of those people. Inshallah. So, and then the other thing that is here as well, and this is where the who here is brand new to the retreat, that hasn't ever attended a retreat before? Okay, uncle, that's fine. So other than our elderly uncle there, I mean the blessed uncle, all of us are familiar with the course of purification, yes? So all of this that it talks about now, i.e. to wear your clothes bought from halal income, eat food from halal means, it's going to fall in one of the categories of your tick sheets, effectively, of the program of tazkiyah. So all of that, if you're doing that program, you naturally start aligning yourself with the levels of salah that you do, inshallah. And the fourth level is to learn and practice the physical posture in detail and try to bring one's posture closer to the prophetic prayer as much as possible. So inshallah, actually, I'll take some volunteers now on this one. So your posture, how you pray your salah. So how can we do this? Husnain. Do you want to come to the front, inshallah? So in terms of, so how would you stand when you're praying? Obviously, I know the Qibla is this way, but if you could stand that way, yeah, kind of thing. I don't want no fatwas given against him.
While I'm in namaz,
Yeah.
I was standing on that level with everyone else. My
Yeah.
toes, like 4 fingers apart, and I'm facing, toes facing Qibla, chest facing Qibla. And when I was like that, I'd have just that below my navel, left hand over.
Perfect. Well, so just hold there for a moment, because I want to keep the audience online going with you as well, alhamdulillah. So, absolutely. So, firstly, just to be clear, we'll talk about the Hanafi fiqh from that perspective. Yeah? So, Brother Husnain is absolutely right. The first thing that you do is when you're standing, you're facing the Qibla, your entire body is, your feet are how far apart? About 4 fingers apart, and they're facing the Qibla. Your toes are facing the Qibla. So they're not a V shape, they're not a W shape, they're not like spread from feet to feet, you know. They are very simply straight, that's it, okay? And then in terms of your hand gestures,
Yeah, so like little finger, wrap around, and fingers together, and then just below the navel a little.
below the navel, yeah, absolutely. That's good. And your body stays like that. And then when you do your takbir,
So I put my palms facing towards the Qibla,
yeah,
and like just the thumbs just go behind the earlobe a little bit and just drag facing towards Qibla.
absolutely. Now the overriding piece, by the way, when you do this, with your postures, is that, and the thing that Brother Husnain is coming through, just a very simple principle, that everything is facing what? The Qibla, yeah? Your feet are facing the Qibla, i.e. your toes, so they're not going off in different directions. The hands are just below the navel. When you do opening takbir, again your hands are facing the Qibla. They're not not covering your ears, nothing like that. Very simple, just below the earlobes. And when you go down to ruku,
So you go down to ruku, keep your back straight like that, so as straight as possible, like a 90-degree angle, and then just
Yeah.
your feet, and then do ruku now.
yeah, and your fingers,
And fingers should be like
yeah, that's good.
together.
Okay, cool. Can you? Oh yeah, he's got the camera on you. Perfect. So, and that's fine. And then when you go to tashahhud, so that's the other one I want people to see.
So long.
Yeah.
So like it'd be like that, and the fingers together face towards
Yeah.
the right foot. Can't see it, but is that general?
Yeah, that'd be good actually.
The right foot should be like that. Like that it should be.
Yeah.
The left foot should be.
And then just part there for a moment. Again, now what is even his right foot? Where are his toes facing? The Qibla. His fingers that are resting on his thighs, they're facing what? They're just not right up to the knee, just above. Where are they facing? The Qibla. Perfect. If you just go back again, and if you can just show them what you do when you raise your finger as well.
So when you start like that and you come to the should
Yeah.
should go lying down, should raise the right finger.
And again, where is that finger facing? The Qibla is not facing up, not right, not left. And what are you doing with your thumb? So everyone can see as well, inshallah. Yeah. He's tucked it in. Yeah. Come here. Perfect. And then you bring it down again. Yeah. Perfect. Alhamdulillah. And then when you do salam,
Slam to your shoulder, like not looking over there, and then salam again to your left hand. Like that.
and I just forgot. And the sujood. Have you got wudu?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you just want to show them the sujood then as well, please?
Okay, so when you do wudu now, when you do sajda, you go down like that, and obviously, say for example, if you're standing up, you go on your knees first,
And maybe face this way actually. Yeah. And if you just stand this, at least the brothers can see it. So where Hassan is, so everyone can see, because I want to see exactly where your hands go. Yeah, that'd be good, inshallah. So for those online, we'll explain it. Oh, actually, no, Hassan, just move back slightly.
be like that, and then you go down on your knees, back straight, like that, and then fingers towards people, and then put your hands there like that,
Yeah.
and you back straight, and you know, and you go like that.
So everyone, can you see where his hands are? Yeah. And where are they facing? What direction? The Qibla. The hands are still towards the Qibla as well, and his face goes in between the hands, equally spaced, yeah? So not too wide open and not tucked in by your chest either. Is that all clear? MashaAllah. Someone's got graduation from Imam Cases. Salah, Postures 101. Alhamdulillah. And remember, if you are on a spiritual retreat, yes, and one of the things that we're learning is that we are engaging with what realm? What realm are we engaging with? The spiritual realm, yes? So we are being taught a method to engage with the spiritual realm. Who's teaching us that method? Is it from a book? Yes or no? No. So we're being taught by someone that's done what? For someone to teach something, they have traveled that path. Yes? Yeah. And if we've traveled that path, and they've traveled that path in terms of engaging Nasiyah, so forth, yeah, they've also traveled that path in terms of where do you think the particularness, the exactness of the postures are? Why are we making it so important? Why does Husnain, by the grace of Allah, learnt those postures exactly as he learnt them? Because they resemble who? The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why it's so important. It's so important to be cognizant and not to get lazy about the postures. If you watch the Mashaikhs pray, even to this moment, when we're all standing and and many of us do, when we're doing our adhkars, we're watching them pray. Do you ever see a lax in standard on their postures? Never. Do their feet ever sway slightly? No. Exactly how they're taught, the way they pray, where their feet are facing, it's always done with effort, always facing the Qibla, always done with exactness. There's no laziness in it. There's no it's just a salah. It's always done precisely. And that's what, inshallah, because why? Because they understand it's resembling the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then number 5, to learn the entire prayer with the correct pronunciation, i.e. the qira'ah, and also to learn the supplications of the funeral prayer, inshallah. So these are really important. We should all know that. We have family members, someone can pass away, and these are just some of the basic things that we should put into our timetable to learn if we haven't learned them. Because you want to be in a position that, inshallah, that when you're doing Salatul Janazah, etc., that you know these supplications. It makes that process a lot closer as well when a loved one passes away. And then finally, to learn the additional supplications and words of remembrance for different postures. And inshallah, what Shaykh Ahmad Abad mentioned, that actually the next levels of retreat are going to go through more of these. Going through the different supplications you can make when doing sujood, the ruku, and the different postures, and to learn translation of the entire salah. And then level 8, to offer salah in a sunnah dress and wear clean and best clothes which can afford and put on fragrance as well. Inshallah. And then 9 and 10 is about learning, memorizing more of the Quran, and to offer the prayer in beginning, not to talk immediately before the salah, not to talk after the sunnah praise. And this is something that even with the spiritual salah, what have we been taught? That you come to the salah a few minutes earlier, do a lataif, to stay in silence, and that after your salah, what do? What have you been advised? Just give yourself 5 more minutes of silence. Don't engage, just trying to stay in the presence of Allah, inshallah. Okay, and then this is the sheet that you tick to make sure you identify what level you're on, and then you go through the program on a 30 to 40 day basis. Now I'm just going to go through the 10 inner levels of Salah. Now this is really interesting. Now this is the basic foundation that when someone joins or takes part in the purification course, they do so, and this is before the introduction of the spiritual salah. So one of the things that you were always taught as a preparation level, this is your spiritual levels of your prayer, is that Allah is with you, watching and hearing you. Those keys, they get, like you go to a military program and there's certain things that just drill into you. This should be drilled into us now. That Allah, so it makes it clear in everything that we do, that Allah's with us, that He's watching us, that He's hearing us. So not just your salah. So we draw that into you. And why? And it said that you do this in every posture at least once. So when you're in standing in Qiyam, you think what? Allah is? Yeah. Do you say it or do you think it? Think it. Just let me be clear. You do not say it because it will break your salah. Yeah. So you just make sure you consciously remember that Allah's with you, that Allah's watching you, that Allah's hearing you. And then the next level says you do the above 3 times in every posture. Now let me be clear, brothers and those who are watching. When you're doing the spiritual salah, you are engaging in this. What are you doing? Why? Because the spiritual salah is the presence of Allah constantly. Yes? So what you should do is, for those of you who are doing the spiritual salah, I'm going to explain to you how you should also engage with these. So I'm going to go through each of the levels, but remember, when you're doing a spiritual salah, if you're in a state of, if your spiritual salah, from the opening takbir to the closing salam, then you're in the presence of Allah throughout that. I.e., that's what it's achieving. It's giving you that presence in your salah. So level 2 then speaks about to be in continuous thought and remembrance of Allah and not to distract one's thoughts intentionally. Again, that's a very basic level for people just generally to do. But if you're in your spiritual salah, then you're going to be focused not look at the dunya. The spiritual salah takes you away from that intention. It makes you focus on the hereafter. The level 3, offering salah with understanding as though you're communicating the words with meaning to Allah. So that's something you can still do practically. At least understand what? Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening surah. Just pick those key surahs that you recite and just understand them. Understand what you recite in tashahhud, because that's a dialogue between Allah and who? The Prophet ﷺ. That's what happened when he went to the Isra Miraj. He was before Allah. There was an engagement between Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. We're being given a bit of that in our salah, so it's good to understand what's being said. So level 4 goes to offer the salah whilst thinking on matters of the hereafter, the level of grave, plain resurrection, paradise, hell in detail. Now here on level 4, if you have learnt the spiritual salah, what can you do at level 4? You can direct your spirit to go, to the hereafter, absolutely. To go, to see the life of the grave. That's one of the abilities of doing the spiritual salah. It allows you to do that. Level 5, to offer the prayer as though it's your last prayer of your life. You don't just get to that, do you? You don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to give this as the last. That's why you build up on these levels. The more you do it, the more, that's why when I speak about the Shaykh Ahmad Dabar or whoever, or the Mashaykhs, when they're praying their prayer, and I go, you never see them laxing even on what? The postures. Why? What gives that motivation? Yes, they want to have that nisbah with the Prophet ﷺ, but also they are treating that prayer like it's their last prayer. Because if you treat it like your last prayer, you're going to be dressing the best, you're going to be smelling the best, you're going to be making sure all your postures are exact. That's what it is. They live exactly what we're just reading here. Then level 6, to be in continuous thought of Allah and the hereafter whilst trying one does not think of worldly matters even unintentionally. So again, if you're doing the spiritual salah, it's something that you can help you achieve that. And then even here on level 7, it goes, imagine you have been given the opportunity to offer the praise in the grave world, i.e. the barzakh, and you are offering the prayer there whilst waiting for the question of the grave. Again, is this something that you can do with the spiritual salah? Yes, thank you. Absolutely. And own it. Really think you can. If any of you are sitting here thinking, because you've been experiencing, that's what you've been doing for the last couple of days, doing that spiritual salah, and it's anchored as well, because we have the hadith of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that when he was praying once, that he did what? That during his prayer he reached out his hand to grab something. Yes. And then at another time in his prayer, he was praying and he stepped back. He did what? He stepped back. And then after, the blessed companions, in the best of adabs, only that they know how, they asked the Prophet of Allah ﷺ that why during the prayer, did something change, or we saw that you do that. And the Prophet of Allah ﷺ said what? That I was in the gardens of paradise, and I could see the fruits of Jannah right to me as if they were real, so I reached out to grab. And when was this happening? Was the Prophet ﷺ asleep? No. He was in and doing what? Performing his salah. Can you see that? There's hadith that's telling us that's possible. We can do that. This is what these levels are directing you to. That's why this course has been designed. Someone has followed, traversed this path. And just like when the companions asked, why did the Prophet step back? He goes, what? That he saw the fire of hell and he felt the heat. Didn't just see it, he felt the heat it was consuming and he stepped back. Again, this was in what? In his Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam Salah. So that's what level 7 is saying, that you can offer this as if it's in the barzakh. And then level 8, and where it says imagine now, for you it's not imagine, it's you can take your prayer to the plane of resurrection on the judgment day. Witness what's happening. And that's what you can do as part of your spiritual prayer, i.e. as developing these levels, inshallah. And then to be in the presence of Allah, the exalted, up to 1 hour after salah. Now already, the Mashayikhs have started to train us in that, because they've said that do the ladais, come a few minutes earlier, and then when you finish your salah, for a few minutes, continue to stay what? In the presence. And now here, as you evolve, you can do it up to 1 hour after the salah. But if we, and I'm saying this to all of us, especially for the likes of myself, if we just follow that small thing that they said for the next 5 days, all of us here in this room and those who are watching online, if you genuinely make a resolve, don't just think of it as words. What Hazrat Sahib said was that for the next few days, i.e. 5 days, if we can do this spiritual salah, our world will change in terms of presence of Allah. What did they say? Our world will change. They didn't say just in salah, by the way. They didn't restrict to where it was. They said our presence with Allah will change. That can happen just in the next 5 days if we just maintain this, because that's when the real test is when we walk away from here, when we don't have someone waking you up, when you don't have all this structure and time, when you have to do it yourself. That's when the real blessings will come, inshallah. And that's what we can, inshallah, look to attain. And then finally, to offer salah with the muraqabah of the different qualities of Allah, the Lord of the worlds, from the 99 names of Allah, and being absorbed in the remembrance of Allah through that particular quality attribute. And ultimately, this is where the entire course then culminates, i.e. when everything comes together. Because what is it that fundamentally, this course of purification that you do, i.e. the 5 amals, the spiritual retreats, they're all looking for us to do what? To begin to resemble of Allah, absolutely. That's literally it. The tick sheets, the tongue, the eye, everything is taking us into what direction? To begin to become a miniature version of reflecting the qualities of Allah. That's it. That's our beginning and that's our end. And if we can begin to do that through whichever method, you're doing that with your tongue, with your tick sheets. We're beginning to do that with our salah, with the spiritual salah, to give us that motivation, to take us in that direction, etc., etc. So inshallah, I'm going to conclude because we're going to begin to set up, have a few moments before Dhuhr Salah. Any questions from anyone here or anyone online? Again, for those who are watching online, if you use the chat function, or the Q&A function as well. So if anyone has any questions, inshallah. Some of the questions we can, if we don't answer now, we can send a message separately as well. So I wouldn't worry, inshallah. Brother Abdullah, any questions? Okay, so inshallah, we've got about 10 minutes or so to freshen up and do wudu, and then inshallah reconvene and be ready for Dhuhr Salah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.